yourself, I know.
Yeah. I know.
So, Jules, tell me about yourself.
This is a very open-ended question. And I'm going to say that I'm a resident alien on the earth. And while I'm here, I do dance and perform and teach and choreograph and figure out ways to communicate with people.
How did you find dance, or did dance find you?
I think I started to dance when I was about 7, and it was just because of my friend at school went to dance after school, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to wear a leotard and dance to some music. So it was kind of sort of following what my friend was doing, and then I started. And just was like, oh, I don't remember consciously thinking this, but it made some kind of sense to me.
What are your inspirations, or what have led to be your inspirations?
I feel like the inspiration thing has changed so much, because like where I grew up, I wasn't really around much art, or I didn't see things, and I'm not from a family of artists. I think probably what I found was like about music and connecting to music, and I think that's probably kept me interested through my career. It doesn't quite make sense, like considering some of the work that I've done, which has been very separate to music. But I think personally, it's always interested me and kept me like active in my mind and questioning things and wondering. I think I get very big into something. So I think when I was a teenager, I was really into classical music, which like from where I grew up was not a thing. Like none of my friends were into classical music. I didn't really talk about it with anyone. It's just something that I did at home. I had some tapes, listened to Cameo, for example, or Swan Lake. So it wasn't particularly experimental or out there. It was quite traditional classical music. But maybe it was also because of there were no words as well, that I sort of enjoyed the sound and like how it made me feel. I'm studying ballet as well. That's part of the listening to music and classical music and feeling that connection. And then I think in my 20s, I was in a very big Bjork phase. Again, I think because of the sound world that she creates and the strangeness of her, I really found wonderful. And the different sound worlds that she creates, which is sort of beyond genre in a way.
Yeah.
And she's also really changed through her career.
You spoke about classical ballet there, and trained at Rambert School of Ballet and Contemporary Dance. What was it like coming to London as a young artist and training in the city?
I mean, I have to say, like at the time going to Rambert School as well, it's a little bit out of London. So you sort of have the feeling of being in London as a young person, which is exciting, but also you're a bit more protected because you're not in the thick of it, and you're in this little bubble of like your training. And then I remember going into Sadler's Wells to watch a lot of performances in the evening during the week, and that was really exciting. I remember like the work that I saw. Well, I saw Rambert for the first time, and I saw William Forsythe when he had his company in Frankfurt, and it was really opened my mind from beyond the sort of ballet training that I'd done to like there's such a vast amount of ways to move and express yourself.
You are an internationally recognised dancer and choreographer who have worked around the world with different companies. Is there a standout moment from working with some of these companies?
There's moments that stand out, and then there's also a feeling of the time, the body of time that you've spent doing things. The first job that I had was in Germany with a ballet company in Koblenz, and that was like exciting because it's my first job, and I was a professional dancer, and it was nice to be in one place and to like learn how to work with people and so like learn like the rhythm of like the day, rehearsal day, and performing, of course. And then I moved to New York, and I was an apprentice with the Jules Cunningham company, and then got into the company. I think that when I started to learn Cunningham, when I was at Rombo School, sort of learn, and then I went to New York actually the summer after I graduated, and like took class at the Cunningham studio. And I think what I liked about it was that I really liked ballet, like for this technical sort of like, you felt really active in the execution of it. So I enjoyed the technical physicality of ballet, and I feel like Cunningham felt similar, except I could just be a bit more myself. Yeah, I had like many experiences, and then came back to London to work with Michael Clark, which was also a really big shift in terms of what I've been doing with Immerse, and then coming back to work with Michael, who's like a very musical choreographer, and we danced to more contemporary music, like David Bowie, and that felt like so exciting to dance to music again, and that kind of music.
You had a chronic back injury when you were working with Jules Cunningham. An injury can be scary. It's very common with athletes, but mentally can also be incredibly challenging. What did you discover or learn during this moment?
The sort of back injury was a third injury in a row at that, in that time. So I had a hip surgery 1 year, and then next year I broke my foot in a performance. And then the year after, then my back sort of shut down. I mean, it was just my body saying, please stop, actually. And I think also, like, mentally, I was really run down and exhausted at that point. So I had to stop for a year and rehab, and I sort of decided to stop dancing at that point. And I was studying a bit more. I mean, I started to study at university when I was in New York, and then sort of did it a bit more when I wasn't able to move, and thought that I wasn't going to dance again. And then that's when I met Michael Clark and started working with Michael.
It's really interesting. It's a great point when, especially when working with different companies. Do you have like a approach to that? Do you have like a way of being that you're like, this is my process, or this is the way I approach something?
Yeah, I think I've felt those going into different environments and culture, that you have to, or I've had to assimilate into that. Now, at this point, I'm like, I don't really want to do that anymore. I don't want to like fit into someone else's thing. And I think that was a sort of a impetus to start to make my own work and think about what is it actually that how do I actually want to be? And I think it's a process after you've been assimilating to other people's and other environments.
You identify as non-binary and have described getting to this point as a slow burn. What experiences in your personal or professional life created this feeling?
I mean, in dance, when you do the training, and like, particularly in ballet, but also in the companies that I've worked for, there's a really strong gender binary. It's like, this is the girl step and the boy step. Starts like that, and then this is what the women do, and then this is what the men do, and the men lift the woman, and like so you do all of that in your school. You're like, okay, well, this is what I am. This is what I have to be to do this role. I guess I started to struggle against that when I was in my 20s, when I lived in New York and trying to understand, like, I'm really trying to be a woman, and I'm just failing at being, it's like coming up against this. I'm a failure at being in the world, being a person, and I think, like, luckily I lived in New York, and so I was able to, through meeting different people and exploring sort of what gender identity is, because I don't think I even knew what it was. So I was meeting a lot of trans people, that time, and still also feeling like, well, I'm not. So am I? Do I have to? Am I a man? No, I'm not a man. Okay, then there was not much language as well. Still at that time, I've felt it since then, and it's only been in the last few years that using they/them pronouns and using the term non-binary it is more in our language. I think it's still in dance being hard to talk about, hard to explain, and get misgendered every day of my life. And then sort of have to figure out when to say things and when to not, and when you feel safe to say things and not. And I still, it's still feeling dance. It's quite hidden.
Do you think as well through through dance, you mentioned at the beginning there that there's very much an identity for female and male styles, like maybe particularly in classical ballet and the origin evolving into other styles. Do you see, or are you driven to create work that is more fluid?
I think then working with people with different genders, it changes things up, because you can't just refer to what's been done before. You have to sort of question it again and be like, okay, how am I going to relate to you? How will it confuse the audience, like if they can't read it in a way that they're used to reading things?
One of my questions is what as an industry can we learn to do for female and non-binary voices? Or what can we do for non-binary voices?
As with everything, the problems are institutional. Like, you can look more and see, okay, well, they've got a female choreographer this year, that's good. Oh, this is a program with all female choreographers, well done. But there's still this binary thing that exists. I mean, when I go and see ballet, still, or even not necessarily ballet, something more modern, still very binary. I feel like it's not enough to just say, oh, we've got some women doing choreography now, or oh, this woman is the director of that company now. It still feels like quite tokenistic, and it's not really dismantling the institution of all of the problems that there are as well in dance as well, in terms of racism and homophobia, transphobia. It's like almost not even progressed enough to address those things. So I think just having some women choreographers is not good enough.
What would be the one thing you want to set straight?
We could work on is like making assumptions about people and where they come from and who they are. I mean, every day people make assumptions about my gender, which is not incorrect. We go around making assumptions about people all day long. I'm not saying I'm good at it. I just think like questioning more, or not assuming things about people could be a start. And
you founded a company, or formed a company, Jules Cunningham and Company. What was the experience like? What is the experience like of creating something?
We do projects, and like we gather and do a project, and it's also not me personally. So I feel like I've got a personal separation, and then there's the company, even though it's my company. But it's a sort of gathering of whoever's going to be doing that project, and then we do it, and then it's sort of like a vessel to go into and create. I have tried to learn from experiences that I've had as a dancer in a company, try to create a safe environment where also people feel like they can speak up, they'll be heard. It's always, every process there's challenges, but I've tried to learn from what I've been through and choose to do things differently. So you recently premiered a work at Sadler's Wells. What was the concept for that work? The piece was called How Did We Get Here? I mean, I think it had been an idea in my head for quite a few years about working with Melanie C, one of the Spice Girls. It sort of happened that we met and chatted and sort of ended up going to the studio and then it sort of grew into this work that we made in January. She has a dance background, but she's not in. Her paths diverged from mine, and I've done a lot of dancing, and she's done a lot of other things, music. But she moves really well, and she's a very physical person, has a strong physical practice. Through the process, it was about understanding how she was moving and how we could move together. And I worked with another dancer, Harry Alexander, who I've collaborated with for a long time, and worked with Michael Clark as well with me. So that's somebody that I knew really well, and then working with Melanie. So we created this trio. I worked with a sound designer called Vibke, who's based in Berlin. And it was sort of questioning, I mean, the title, How Did We Get Here, was very personal, or also about working with Melanie, like, how did this happen, kind of thing. At that point as well, at this point in my life, being like, how did I get here? What am I doing? And then thinking on a bigger scale of like, how did we get here in the world and like in the universe? So it sort of was asking the like very personal questions to like asking these bigger questions.
For someone who wants to choreograph but also perform their own work, is there things to consider? Do you need more eyes in the room?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be outside and inside. And I think when I do that, I spend a lot of the time outside, and then closer saying like, okay, I have to get also back inside. And then I think it's about also the way that you structure the work, and in terms of like solo work or like duets, so that you can, you know, be outside of it and be in. And I think just using the recording, everything, and then I work with people who watch it from the outside as well. Even though it can be hard to get the perspective on it when you're in it, there's things that I learned from being in it as well that I find really useful. When I've stepped out of it and then I've gone in and then danced with the other people, they're like, oh, right, okay, that makes more sense now that you've done it with us, because we feel what you want it to be.
Like, there's a very different feeling when you're sat in the audience watching a work, but actually being with the cast or being with the dancers and like having that completely different perspective on stage, behind the curtains, everyone's kind of getting ready. That must be actually a different adrenaline rush in a way.
Yeah, I find it much worse to not be in the work than to be in it, because I can't deal with it. I guess you have to give up a lot of control. But I feel like maybe I'm like really controlling person, so like I have to be in it to sort of control the situation.
What piece of memorabilia do you have that is valuable, sentimental, that you've taken away from a show or process?
So I've got this little thing here. This is still puzzles me, you know, because this is a unitard. This is like a typical example of like what I wear. This is a piece made by Stevie Stewart, and for the show How Did We Get Here that I just did outside the Swells. So it's very tight. I've worn a unitard for like all of the work that I've done with Merce and with Michael. It's like always the costume. And then I was like, when I make work, I'm not going to wear this costume. I don't want to wear like fitted costume. And like here I am still wearing this thing. So there's obviously something that I appreciate about it in terms of you can really see the body. You can see what it is, but also you can't hide. This is a bit of a paradox about me, is like that I really want to hide. And then I do a job where I like dance in front of people and wear this kind of thing. So that's like an ongoing question about myself.
What would you like your legacy to be?
I think to keep focusing on changing, allowing yourself to change.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to the Royal Academy of Dance for hosting this conversation at their global headquarters in London.